clients I worked with in Syria. That was what she said. We were talking about emergency response plans for if there was a rocket attack or something, or the camp got overrun or whatever it was. And she said, I can't leave these people. I'm staying. And I was like, well, I'm here to protect you, so I'm staying with you.
Wow.
That I couldn't walk away. I couldn't live with myself if I walked away from that. And so that was a decision that the two of us had to make beforehand. And I told my guys, I don't want you guys sticking around. If something happens, I want you out with the rest of the people. And they were like, no, not happening. We're sticking around too. So, that's what you get when you hire good people. But we got stopped by a roadblock at one point. And so I turned to look over the cab of the pickup truck and see what's going on. I look back and he's gone. And so my first thing is I'm bailing out of the bed of that pickup truck. I'm like, I got to find this guy. I don't know whether he got grabbed or whether he, whatever, and maybe fell out. So I'm looking around. Finally, I found him. He was in a crowd of people taking a bunch of pictures. But, it was one of those situations where I'm like, man, I mean, you gotta think on your feet. You got to be prepared to act and take care of things at a moment's notice. Well, look to the Bible. He said, when Jesus fed the 5,000, he made everybody sit down. He's like, try that. When you have a crowd, make everybody sit down. As soon as they sit down, it's really easy to see who the troublemakers are. The people that we would blend in with, obviously the majority of Haitians are black. Their ancestry is from Africa, and they're quite dark. Skin color, we're not going to blend in. The big things you can do is blend in with the other, Americans, the Europeans, people that look like us that are over there, and not draw attention to ourselves. In Haiti, there were maybe a handful of times that I carried a long gun. Most of the time it was a concealed pistol. It was stuff just to maintain a low profile. Now, but yeah, blending in is definitely a big thing. Now in Syria, we didn't blend in at all. I mean, we wore body armor, we wore, Cry Precision pants or whatever cool guy gear we had. It was a tactical fashion show out there. We wore a huge part of it is evacuation skills. You see something going bad, you're getting out of there. You're not standing there to play Rambo and fight somebody. That's not your goal. If I have to put hands on somebody, that means I didn't see something coming. My awareness failed for some reason, and my client is now exposed to risk because I go hands-on with one guy. There could be 3 others behind me, or circling around, or whatever. We don't know what the situation might be, and we can't afford to take that risk with somebody else's life. And that's the thing that we have to understand as security professionals, is that somebody else's life depends on the choices that I make. So my choice is always avoidance. And the only way to do that is through heightened level of awareness.
Welcome back to another Gutter Fighting Secrets Tactical Podcast, guys. Today is going to be Tactical Podcast 38, and we are here with Dan Bertin today. Dan served many years as an overseas security contractor. He started out going through the law enforcement academy, and shortly after that, got recruited to work for Diamondback Protective Services. Dan has served as a team leader, a trainer, and an executive protection officer for Diamondback overseas in places like Syria and I believe Africa. And he has kind of run the gamut in his private security career. So I asked him to come on, and he said yes. So I'm very thankful to have him on. Dan, welcome to the program, bro.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So right off the bat, man, I want to ask you this. What was working in Syria like?
Well, let me back up 1 second with the introduction. I haven't actually been to Africa yet. That's on the bucket list. I've done the Middle East. I've done Central America. I've done the Caribbean, that kind of thing. I haven't done Africa yet, but
okay.
Let's hope. Syria was kind of like what you see on TV. Where we were stationed was sort of south. Let me try to picture a map. About southwestern Syria, close to the Jordanian and Israeli border, sort of in that corner there, which is also where ISIS hangs out, or did hang out at that time. I think they've been pretty much pushed out of Syria. But anyway, so yeah, a lot of airstrikes, a lot of bombs, a lot of shootouts, a lot of rocket trucks driving around, and stuff like that. But very little of it was targeted at us. We were working with I was working with a humanitarian organization that was trying to provide medical aid there, and so obviously the first thing you do with something like that is try to find a safe location where you're not in the line of fire, because it's hard to hook somebody up to an EKG when somebody's bombing you. So
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a challenge. So when you were over in Syria, man, I mean, what dates are we talking here? Was this kind of in the thick of the conflict over there?
yeah, so the Civil War, I believe, started in I want to say 2011, and really there was very little, let's say, U.S. intervention up until I think 2017. I could be wrong on the dates, but I know we were some of the first American contractors to be there. I'm not going to say the first, but some of the first. And I was there from March 2017 until September of 2017, so about 6 months.
Wow. That's got to be exhilarating, man. Going overseas, working in a combat zone, not really knowing what's going to come day to day. It's got to just be a rush.
It is. It's. I'm sure you've heard this saying. All your listeners have probably heard this saying, but it's 95% complete boredom, punctuated by 5% just complete terror. It's an up and down roller coaster of things, and so a lot of it was just very mundane, day to day, boring stuff. And then every so often there would be something that would just spike the adrenaline, like you would believe.
Yeah, I bet, man. I mean, I'm sure when you've got bullets whizzing over your head or bombs flying near you, I mean, just to live through that has got to be afterwards. It got to give you an endorphin rush.
Oh, definitely.
So where else have you gone around the globe doing security specifically, if you can tell us?
Yeah, it's super secret.
Gotta ask.
Yeah, I've been to Haiti a few times. That's probably my favorite place in the world that I've worked. I've been to Honduras several times. I've been to Jamaica, and then I've done a fair bit in the U.S. and Canada as well.
Now, offline, you were saying that you came out east during Hurricane Sandy and did a little bit of work out there.
That's correct. Yeah, I worked with a disaster relief organization that was basically just kind of they basically set up a camp and were sort of feeding people and just helping people kind of have some, just some more emotional relief than anything after that whole superstorm there. People had no power, no heat, no water, all that kind of stuff. And so they set up essentially a food truck. They were doing, chili cheese dogs and stuff like that, and trying to just, bring people's spirits up. And anytime you do something like that in an area where you're not charging for it or whatever else, people flock to it. So I was essentially doing more crowd control than anything, but yeah, that was kind of the gist of that.
Now, were you guys armed at that point or unarmed?
We were unarmed because it's New York, and not being from there, especially. A couple of our people had expandable batons. We talked to the local police, and they said we were silly for not having weapons, and highly suggested we carry something. But at that point, it was a little bit late. So the officers that walked that beat basically said if they saw anything, they wouldn't say anything. But aside from that, it was fists and feet. So luckily, nothing ever came of it.
Yeah, that's good, man. New York doesn't really play around, but it's funny that they said that to you. And I always find it funny that, when it really comes down to it and you're in the middle of a crisis, cops are really, they're professionals and they don't want to see anybody else get hurt. They don't want to see good people get hurt. So it's been my experience that in the end, yes, they're there to enforce the law. But if there is a law that's silly and nonsensical that, you guys as private security couldn't carry batons, for example, why not look the other way and say, I didn't see anything. This guy's just trying to look out for himself, right?
Exactly.
So, I want to circle back around to Syria real quick. Now, we saw in Syria around 2011, the Arab Spring and all that civil war happened out there. We're seeing, and without getting political here, we're seeing something very similar kind of take place in the States right now. Actually, eerily reminiscent to, kind of what we saw out that way. People are really starting to get prepared on all ends of the spectrum. And, it doesn't matter what beliefs you have over here, but people are really starting to get kind of prepared. What words of advice from your time overseas. Could you give patriots and sheepdogs out here to, get better prepared and kind of mitigate our own risks, so to speak?
Whew, man, that's a loaded question. So I guess the first thing is you have to understand your surroundings. You have to know where you live and what the area around you is like. For example, I'm in Texas. I'm in a small city. We had some protests, but nothing crazy. No rioting, no burning, no cops walking away or anything like that. And so for us, what we do is prepare with food, water, emergency supplies, where we can essentially bug in. I have bug out preparations to some degree. I'm not as hardcore as some guys are, but I have, a basic setup where if I have to go, I can grab something and be gone for, and I can last for, 3 or 4 days pretty easily with what I've got. But you want to understand basically whether you want to bug in or bug out. And if you're in an area where you're close to, let's say you've got a studio apartment in New York City or something like that, and you're in a downtown sort of area, and there's a lot of unrest and stuff, and you start to see things moving toward you. Well, it might be time to get out of there. Take a week of vacation, go to another state or another area or something, and just wait that thing out. So that's the first thing you want to find is what your plan A is going to be. Always have a plan B. So if you decide you're going to bug out, have a plan B to bug in. If you're going to bug in, have a plan B to bug out. You need to have secondary and tertiary plans in place just in case something goes wrong, essentially. And and you also have to think about, and this is the big thing that gets overlooked within the sort of prepper community, is the preparing for your family members. I've got an 8-month-old baby. I need to plan a little bit differently. My bug out plan has to include a stroller. I can't just sling an AR and some body armor and be good to go and play Rambo. I've got different priorities. So that's a big consideration that you need to think about is, what if you have a 70-year-old mom who's in a wheelchair? What's your bug out plan look like then? And you have to plan for that type of thing. And then of course, feeding the mouths, keeping everybody hydrated, all that kind of stuff all plays into it. Now, the nice thing about this is we haven't seen a complete grid shutdown. So realistically, if you go a state over, you can find a place where you can relax, get a hotel, all that kind of stuff. And you're not going to have too many problems. You're not out in the woods, trying to catch fish and stuff like that. Unless that's what you want to do.
Some people would find that to be like a really, relaxing vacation, but I don't think any of us want to go and do that for the next year or so.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us want to be forced to do that. Let's put it that way. It's optional. It's different.
No, well put. And I like what you're saying about have a primary, secondary, tertiary plan. If you're going to be bugging in, have an option to bug out. If you're going to be bugging out, have an option to find somewhere and bug in. And then really a very practical piece of advice is, look, right now you can just go to the state over or 2 states over and ride it out. You don't need to board your house up and defend it to the death, right? You can just relax and keep yourself and your family safe and really concentrate on the most important things.
Right.
Which is what I find more reasonable people out there will do, like yourself. You want to look after, your children, your wife, yourself ultimately as well. And I think that that's really a valuable piece of advice for guys to hear, because we get guys in the survival community and even martial arts community who say, I've got, my nods, I've got my helmet, I've got my band, everything going, and I'm just going to go to the woods and that's it. But really, what good are you doing when you do that, right?
Exactly.
So now, Haiti, you were working over there for a while. And again, was that humanitarian type stuff?
Yeah, that's really kind of the niche that I sort of carved out for myself. Like you said, my background was I was on a path toward law enforcement. I got derailed from that, getting into the security industry, but not having military credentials made it a little more challenging to find work and made me kind of look in sort of unconventional areas. And I ended up in Haiti a couple of times, and like I said before, that was my favorite place that I've ever worked. I love the people there. I love the culture. I love just the sort of the hustle and bustle of working there. It's a very exciting place to work, but it's not, like every car has an IED in it, like it could in Syria. So you got a danger level of sort of petty crime, maybe a little bit of organized crime, but not like full on terrorism and like suicide bombers and things like that you might have to worry about in some areas of the Middle East. So it keeps you on your toes, but you're not as worried about dying. Let's put it that way.
So when you guys in Haiti were done working for the day, would you just relax, go to the beach, that type of thing?
The beaches are a tall order in Haiti, depending on where you're at. We were primarily in the Port-au-Prince area. There's a lot of pollution there, a lot of garbage. And I mean, the first time I was there was dead bodies floating in the water and stuff because they had just had a bunch of riots and stuff. So not an area where you want to swim. The second time I was there was right after the earthquake, and I had a little bit more mobility that time. And so there were areas further up the coast. So, kind of going around. I mean, Haiti's sort of shaped a little bit like this. You got the Port-au-Prince area right in the palm of that bay, and then if you go further up the coast and sort of around, there's some nice beaches and stuff up there that you can go to. A lot of jellyfish. Got stung by a lot of jellyfish there, but the sand's nice, the water's nice and clean, and so every once in a while we would do that. But it was pretty rare. We were pretty busy. Most of those type of things, you bring a bunch of doctors to a country that doesn't have doctors or has very few doctors, and all of a sudden you've got, crowds on your hands. So we didn't have a huge amount of downtime.
What was that like working around all those crowds of people protecting, I'm assuming, the doctors? I'm assuming that there were incidents, or were times rather, that you would have found things getting a little hairy, right?
Yeah, 100%. Haitian culture is it's dangerous territory to get into generalizations nowadays, but the Haitian culture that I experienced they're very excitable people, and so they can go from peaceful and quiet to what I would consider to be a riot within seconds. But a lot of times they don't mean harm, and this is something that I really had to pick up, was learning some of the cultural differences. They like to be pressed in close together. That's the way they operate. I like my distance. So having people that close to me was a little bit off-putting at first. I had to learn to accept that just because somebody's in close or trying to hug you or touch you or whatever doesn't mean they're hostile. All those types of things. And then just because somebody's raising their voice doesn't mean they're yelling at you. They might just be excited, and that's the way they do things. And so it took some getting used to. I can honestly say I didn't slam anybody on their ground that didn't need to be, which was nice. I have a tendency to be fairly controlled in that type of thing, but if you're not prepared for that, it's definitely the type of thing that can really catch you off guard, and it takes some getting used to. And so it's always good to have sort of a mentor when you're going to a different country. Have somebody that's been there before, somebody that understands a little bit of the culture and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there were some hairy times for sure. There were definitely times when the riots were not just people being excited; they were people genuinely pissed off. But in those type of situations, again, you have a bug out plan. You're basically grabbing people and evacuating, and that's as simple as it gets. You always have to have choke points and things you can shut down in order to stop the crowds from encroaching and stuff like that.
That's interesting stuff, man, as far as crowd control and everything like that goes. Can you give us a little bit more on crowd control and maybe some tools that have been successfully used to mitigate the risks that you guys were facing out there?
Yeah, actually, interestingly enough, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from a Special Forces chaplain who was with the 82nd Airborne there. And this was in 2010, right after the earthquake. And what he told me, he came to visit our camp and sort of see what we were doing and everything. We had we were on the same camp as a bigger organization that had a military liaison that worked with them. And so he came to talk with this liaison, and I ended up sort of just shaking hands with him and whatever else, and sort of told him a little bit about what I was doing and everything. One of the things he said, well, look to the Bible. He said, when Jesus fed the 5,000, he made everybody sit down. He's like, try that. When you have a crowd, make everybody sit down. As soon as they sit down, it's really easy to see who the troublemakers are. And that was the best piece of advice I've ever had. Because if you can get everybody to sit down, one person stands up and starts yelling, well, you know who your troublemaker is. And, it takes people some time to get up, and you can address things a little bit. You have sort of that, it's almost like a reactionary gap. You have some time to deal with what might be progressing. So I thought that was really good advice, and it helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's great advice. Speaking of advice, we've got guys out here who want to become contractors, who want to go overseas, who want to live that James Bond life, so to speak. What advice can you give to guys who want to get into this career field but maybe haven't quite broken in yet?
Well, okay, so the first thing I would say is most companies are looking for military experience with a combat MOS. Usually they're showing preference to people that have something beyond, basic military, basic Army or Marine Corps grunt. They want somebody, special forces, somebody that has a specialty in something. That's what I've experienced is they want something like that. Most of the good paying jobs, they want 4 to 6 years minimum. That being said, if you're a little bit older and maybe the military is not your game, or for whatever reason, you can't get in or don't want to get in, and you still want to get into this, the big thing I would say is get training. You want to stack your resume as much as you can. And here's the big thing. We'll get into stacking the resume in a second, but the big thing is you have to start at the bottom. You have to be prepared for that. My first real job, I had a few little crowd control jobs and security jobs domestically, working, boxing matches and stuff like that beforehand, but it was nothing exciting. My first real job overseas was in Haiti, and I was basically a perimeter guy for a protection detail. And so the bodyguard would call ahead and he'd say, hey, go stage in this area, get a perimeter, keep people back, et cetera, et cetera. So I was a grunt. I just did whatever I was told, whenever I was told to do it. And I didn't complain about it. I was the first one to volunteer for anything. I was, I was willing to do whatever it took because that was what I wanted to do, and I was passionate about it, and I had fun doing it. And that went, that built into other things. I started to get other opportunities after that. And of course, even taking a crappy job on a job like that that's overseas, you put that on your resume. Now it's going to bump you a step up for the next one. So that's the big thing. Understand that you're going to start at the bottom. You're going to do something that sucks. It's probably not going to pay well, and you're going to hate it. Or you might hate it. You might love it. You might be like, oh, this is awesome. I love every part of this. And that's kind of how I was. But you may be like, man, I'm so much better than this or whatever. Suck it up. Just do it. All right. So that's the first thing. Start at the bottom. Don't be afraid of it. Don't turn up your nose at it. You're not better than any of this because everyone else started at the bottom too. The second thing is get training. We talked about this a little bit before, but start. There's a lot of these like 5-day, 7-day, 9-day, 12-day courses where it's trying to set you up for like the whole package of, private military contractor or high-risk civilian contractor or bodyguard this or security that. If your company is going to require something like that, they will put you through that. What you need to do is develop your skills so that if they decide to put you through a class like that, you can be at the top of the class with every single skill set. So the first thing, this ties into guys that have limited money but still like to train as well. You got to set some priorities. And I'll give you what I believe the hierarchy of priorities should be. You should start with fitness. Then should come your hand-to-hand skills. And those two things should be ongoing continually. I mean, everything should be ongoing continually, but those two things should be on a weekly, if not daily basis, doing some kind of fitness training and some kind of hand-to-hand combatives, martial arts, boxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, some type of training like that where you're getting hands-on with people. Those are the types of things that are going to take you further than, some kind of ninja training of some sort. So fitness, hand-to-hand. After that, pistols. 90%, 99% of the states in this country allow you to carry a pistol in some fashion. So get good with it. Get a license to carry. Get comfortable. having a gun on you. In a lot of cases, when you're overseas in a protection capacity, you're going to be carrying concealed. It's not going to be some drop leg holster and a plate carrier. It's going to be a pistol inside the waistband. It might be something that you've had to obtain locally. And, so get good with multiple pistols. Learn how to shoot a Glock. Learn how to shoot a Beretta. Learn how to shoot a 1911. Learn how to shoot a Smith & Wesson revolver. Learn how to shoot a llama. Get experience with lots of different guns. And that goes for, the next step as well. Learn how to run a shotgun. Learn how to run a rifle. Two main rifles, AKs and ARs. Learn both of those and be proficient at them. And I don't mean, and I'm gonna step on some toes here, but don't. Everybody says, "Oh, I got a buddy who's a Green Beret," or "I had a friend who was an uncle was a Navy SEAL," or "I had a sister whose mom was married to a guy." That doesn't matter. You don't learn by osmosis. You learn by doing. So get courses. Get somebody who's really going to put you through the paces and run you through a class that's going to push your limits, because that's how you learn. That's how you get better. This whole, I went out with a guy for 2 hours on a Saturday. You might learn a few things, but it's not ingrained. And all that stuff needs to be ingrained to the point of unconscious competence. So that's, and all these skill sets are scalable. You can start with taking a 2-day carbine course with an AR. And then you can go to taking a 2-day course with an AK, and then you can take maybe a 4-day course with an AR that includes some CQB. You can really scale these things up as you go, but don't sign up. In my opinion, take it for what it's worth. Don't sign up for one of these 12-day courses like I did, thinking, okay, this is going to be everything I need to know to do such and such a job, because it's just not. The instructors may or may not have the credentials they claim, and they definitely haven't encountered the situation you're going to encounter. So it's it's not a waste of time. They teach things like critical thinking. They teach a lot of stuff that's valuable. And taking a 12-day course, you get a lot of repetitions on stuff, but you're getting better use if you can diversify more.
I like what you're saying there as far as starting with your fitness and your hand-to-hand combatives, which obviously are going to be the most important things for anybody, but especially somebody going overseas working in security. I can see 100% how that would be so valuable. I think that probably putting your hands on somebody in a foreign country and you don't know anything about them, it's got to be kind of a daunting experience the first couple times you have to do it. You don't know if they're freaking trained to hand-to-hand combat. You don't know much, right? And then about pistols, shotguns, and rifles, specifically about the pistol. And that makes sense to me as well, about the pistol, how you're probably going to have to attain it overseas, or at least get it issued over there and keep it in your waistband, not to draw a lot of attention. So you might as well get good with something that you're going to have to carry a lot. Now, the 12-day course, and I don't want to step on any toes here either, but are you at liberty to discuss which course it was that you went through?
I am.
So frankly, I've taken a lot of courses myself, and there are some that I just don't go there. So if that's what you're doing, I respect that.
I would prefer to not go there, just because I've been pretty vocal about. I want to be careful about what I say, because the instructors put together a good course. I just don't think the course was useful or relevant. So we'll leave it at that.
100%, man. I will honor that. And I do want to touch on the courses, though, a little bit further. So, there are a lot of courses out there. Some of these courses run a fuckload of money. Like, I'm talking ridiculous amounts of money. And if you don't have a GI Bill or something, I don't know where anybody gets that money. I will leave out some of the courses that I've been to and observed that. There was one in particular that's a very notable one of the more notable ones. And I was only able to do a week of the course. That was that expensive. And it was a 8-week course or some crazy shit. While I am aware that does put that on your resume, I am still in contact with many of those individuals, and a lot of them aren't even working in the industry now. So how valuable could it really be, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a great point too, is, and like I said, if your company wants to put you through something, they're going to do it. They're not going to require you to have some specific training beforehand. They may have a general goal, like, have competency with pistol, competency with shotgun, et cetera, et cetera. But they're not going to say you have to have taken this specific course for this length of time, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to put you through the qualification to see where you're at. They're going to put you through a course where they're like, if you don't have this type of training exactly, this is what we require. For example, the WIPS course, the Worldwide Protective Services, or whatever it is that the State Department requires. Okay. If you're going to get a State Department gig, they're going to put you through that training. So you don't need to go take it privately and spend 8 weeks and $20,000 or whatever.
Yeah, crazy stuff, man. And I like what you're saying about, some of those high-risk security courses, and, they're all kind of like meshing into each other, but some are better than others. In any case, a very good point that if your company wants you to go through it, they're going to put you through it. And I've seen that time and time again where, the skills that you're acquiring are good. They will serve you later on in life, but perhaps. But it's just the type of thing. Like I don't get the impression that, and I didn't do really much work overseas, as far as this stuff goes, but I get the impression it's not all of this shoot 'em up, Rambo plate carrier action. I assume it's a lot more like you're saying, you got to put your hands on a guy and take him down to the ground real quick, or, cover your principal while they run away, something like that. Am I correct?
100%. Yeah. A huge part of it is evacuation skills. You see something going bad, you're getting out of there. You're not standing there to play Rambo and fight somebody. That's not your goal. If I have to put hands on somebody, that means I didn't see something coming. My awareness failed for some reason, and my client is now exposed to risk because I go hands on with one guy. There could be 3 others behind me, or, circling around, or, whatever. We don't know what the situation might be, and we can't afford to take that risk with somebody else's life. And that's the thing that we have to understand as security professionals, is that somebody else's life depends on the choices that I make. Mm-hmm. So my choice is always avoidance. And the only way to do that is through heightened level of awareness.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right there. And you mentioned something really profound there, is you're there to protect somebody else's life. So you've gone through, and I know we were chatting offline a little bit, and you went through this where you literally, somebody else's life was kind of in your hands, so to speak. And now, you're stateside once again, and you once again have a principal, somebody else's life in your hands. But, it's your kid and your wife. And we were chatting a little bit, and you were giving me some advice about, Lord forbid anything, escalates here in the States. These are some things that we might want to think about. Now, I really want to kind of touch on this. How do we go about protecting our friends and, more importantly, our families? With these types of skill sets, I would assume it's really applicable here for riots or pandemics or whatever else may come our way. An asteroid hits, the aliens come. Could you give us any tips about how to use these protection skills to protect our loved ones?
Well, just circling back to what I just said, a big part of it is that avoidance. When you start to see things, you're avoiding one way or another. You're either bugging out or you're bugging in. You're not going to go places. If I know that downtown let's say there was protests last night and a cop car got burned. Well, now I realize, okay, things are starting to get sketchy. I'm not going downtown. I'm going to tell my wife, don't go downtown. Don't go anywhere near there. Stay in the house if you can. If you have to go out, let me know where you're going. All that kind of stuff. Keep some accountability. And, and I'm going to start to prepare some things. I'm going to maybe load up the car and have some stuff in there where it's like, okay, if I need to get out, I can get out. Or if I'm at work and she needs to get out, she can get out, and I'll, give her a location to get to. The weapons are a part of that as well, but that's the last thing you want to have to deal with. Again, like I said, someone else's life is in my hands. I need to protect them. And the only way I can protect them is by not being around any kind of violence. Because, if a crowd of 100 people shows up, I can pull out my AR and start shooting people. But, I may not be justified. I may spend the rest of my life in prison, and then I can't protect them from anything. And B, if I'm shooting this guy's coming around. I can't keep 100 people back. I don't care how many 65 green tips I've got, it's not gonna be enough, And so the big thing is avoidance. You want to have contingencies, which are your firearms, which are your skills. But I mean, the big thing is you just want to have that idea of awareness, pay attention to it before it becomes an issue, and then get out.
Avoidance, awareness, and contingency. I like that. Now, you ever have been in a situation where your principal just won't listen to you?
Yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah.
So working in the humanitarian organization, I've worked with a lot of missionary groups, and they have this. They're good people. Don't misconstrue this. They're very good people, but they have this sense of philanthropy or something, humanitarianism, where they want to help people, and they will do that to their own detriment.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's a conscious choice they make, where they're just like, you know what, I'm here to help no matter what, if literally, even if it kills me. And I commend that. But it's really hard to protect somebody with that kind of a mindset. It presents some challenges. And I had one of the clients I worked with in Syria. That was what she said. We were talking about emergency response plans for if there was a rocket attack or something, or the camp got overrun or whatever it was. And she said, I can't leave these people. I'm staying. And I was like, well, I'm here to protect you, so I'm staying with you.
Wow.
I couldn't walk away. I couldn't live with myself if I walked away from that. And so that was a decision that the two of us had to make beforehand. And I told my guys, I don't want you guys sticking around. If something happens, I want you out with the rest of the people. And they were like, no, not happening. We're sticking around too. So, that's what you get when you hire good people. But also, yeah, it's definitely an issue where sometimes they just won't listen because this is what they're doing. And the thing that I've learned from that is that my job as a protector, as security, is to support their mission. And 9 times out of 10, that's through protecting in some way. But sometimes that might just mean letting them do what they need to do.
Mm.
And that's a situation where I had the authority to make that decision. And of course, you always have the authority to make the decision over your own life. If someone's doing something you don't like, especially if you're like working, let's say you're doing security for an oil field person or something like that, and they're like, I'm staying, I got to have this oil. Well, you can walk away from that. You can say, I don't feel comfortable with this because I'm not about to put my life on the line for oil, but I will put my life on the line for somebody who's trying to help others.
Mm.
And so that's a decision everybody has to make. But yeah, there's definitely some times when I've had clients that won't listen. I had another time in Haiti when I was working with a photographer, and I would tell him, don't do this, don't do that. And he would always say, you let me do my job and you do yours. That was his catchphrase. And so we'd be driving down through the middle of Port-au-Prince, and it's a crazy place. It's very crowded, very chaotic, a lot of stuff going on. And he wanted to sit in the bed of the pickup truck so he could take pictures. So guess what? I'm sitting in the bed of the pickup truck with him. And we got stopped by a roadblock at one point. And so I turned to look over the cab of the pickup truck and see what's going on. I look back and he's gone. And so my first thing is I'm bailing out of the bed of that pickup truck. I'm like, I got to find this guy. I don't know whether he got grabbed or whether he, whatever, and maybe fell out. So I'm looking around. Finally, I found him. He was in a crowd of people taking a bunch of pictures. But, it was one of those situations where I'm like, man, you gotta think on your feet. You got to be prepared to act and take care of things at a moment's notice.
Now, did you guys have a QRF that you were working with in Haiti, or was it kind of you're on your own?
In Haiti, I was the QRF.
Okay. That's got to be a kind of a tricky feeling, man, when you're going over there realizing that you don't got any backup. Like if shit goes down, you're on your own.
Yeah, and in the industry that I've worked, that's usually how it's been. Is I'm working for non-government organizations. I'm working in, to use an overused phrase, austere environments. Don't have the backing of the U.S. military or the U.S. government. It's one of those things where you have to play things a little bit safer, and not to downplay anything that those other guys do, but when you know that the Marine Corps can show up and rescue you, you can be a little bolder. You take a little more chances if you want to. Not saying those guys do, but you could, And with what we do, it's like if something goes wrong, I'm hoofing it back to the Dominican Republic.
How does licensing for firearms and all that type of thing work over in that situation? I mean,
no comment.
Gotcha. So when you talk about, living in an austere environment, I'm assuming blending in would be a big part of that as well, to the degree that you can.
Right.
I realize guys like you and me in Haiti, probably we stick out a little bit, but there's got to also be some ways that you can blend in a little better.
Yeah. So the people that we would blend in with, obviously the majority of Haitians are black. Their ancestry is from Africa and they're quite dark. Skin color, we're not going to blend in. The big things you can do is blend in with the other, Americans, Europeans, people that look like us that are over there, and not draw attention to ourselves. In Haiti, there were maybe a handful of times that I carried a long gun. Most of the time, it was a concealed pistol. It was stuff just to maintain a low profile. Now, there's some things looking back. Some articles of clothing that I wore that was probably making me stand out more. And my thinking at the time, I'd have to revisit it if I were to go back again, but my thinking at the time was this particular article of clothing, which is I don't know if you've seen the 511 tactical vest, the tan, like fisherman style vest that they have.
Yeah. That
is a badge of office, or at least was at that time in Haiti, where when they saw that, they knew that meant you're a bodyguard, you're a security guy, and it was a little bit of a deterrent for people because they had an idea that guy's probably carrying a gun. And so it worked to my advantage. I think if I were to go back, I'd have to reassess the situation and kind of decide, is that still a thing? Is that something I want to do? Would I prefer to just kind of blend in with the clients? Wear a pair of jeans and a scrub shirt, or something like that, maybe to blend in with medical people or something like that. I mean, I'd have to revisit that. But yeah, blending in is definitely a big thing. Now in Syria, we didn't blend in at all. I mean, we wore body armor. We wore, Cry Precision pants or whatever cool guy gear we had, it was a tactical fashion show out there. We wore it. But yeah, and I've done some covert protection work in the U.S. as well for like jewelry salesmen and stuff that are moving a lot of diamonds around. And for that type of thing, you're very low profile. You're wearing a jeans and a t-shirt. You're carrying concealed. You're in a low profile, nondescript vehicle, and you're just trying to blend in. You're picking them up from an airport, taking them to a mall or something like that, or taking them from a mall to a hotel. You just want to look like, somebody's brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you're talking about doing covert security work, what is the difference between covert security work and overt security work besides, the plate carriers and the, hidden tools? Is there any big difference of tactics that you would utilize?
Yeah. I mean, when you're going, and a lot of it is manpower dependent, but when you're going with an overt type thing, you might be running, a 4-man diamond or an Iraqi diamond or manpower dependent. You might have a lot more going on just with your personnel. You might have an advanced team. You might have, there's a lot of different things that you might be able to utilize. Whereas with a covert thing, it might be just one guy. The companies that I work for, they would just hire one operator. So basically you pick the client up, you run them to and from. So it's you doing everything. So what I would do is I would show up, at least 4 hours in advance. I would drive the routes, make sure everything was, clear. I knew where I was going. I would run through the location, the mall, the hotel, whatever it was. I would run through that, make sure I kind of knew the layout, knew any, areas of concern and stuff like that. So a lot of it's the same, with your typical security, you're going to have an advanced team. You're going to have your bodyguard, and then you're going to have your certain perimeter team or your follow car or whatever. And so I would try to do the same thing, just all myself, so you can't do anything simultaneously. If you have to move to 2 locations, you can't have your advanced team skip ahead. They have to just, you just have to have checked that already. And if not, you gotta fly by the seat of your pants.
I've always found individual security work, individual protection work is the most challenging of them all. It's got to be the type of thing that's very stressful yet also rewarding in the same time.
It's a ton of fun. I really enjoy it. I like the interface of just hanging out with the client and kind of getting to know them a little bit. Because with this company, all the clients that I worked with were very personable. I mean, they do this all the time. They're in a city they don't know, so they're happy to talk to their bodyguard or whatever. And that was a lot of fun. And just doing that prep work to me is fun. It's very it's very fulfilling. I've got a book here somewhere. I'm not sure where it is, but I have a book by a guy named Duke Speed that's called the Advanced Agents Worksheet or something like that. It's a book that's all like worksheets on how to set up a proper advance, and it's a huge resource. So let me see if I can find it. Your listeners would enjoy that.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to hear more about that. I know that doing advanced work is really one of the most important things of any detail, whether you're doing surveillance or whether you're doing executive protection work. Advanced work is really some of the more important stuff that you can do.
100%. Yeah. Advanced Agent Planning Guide by Duke Speed.
Advanced Agent Planning Guide. Cool.
It's backwards on my screen, but hopefully your listeners can
I'll
figure
throw it down below in the comments.
Yeah.
Duke Speed.
Yeah, it's a great book. Very useful in some of that kind of stuff.
So surveillance, counter surveillance or surveillance detection, rather, I would assume would be a really big part of this as well, especially working on your own. Are you kind of glancing up in your rear view when you take turns, that type of thing, kind of pretty frequently, I'd imagine?
Yeah. I know you have a lot more background in that than I do. I haven't had any real formal training, but I'm pretty good at pattern recognition. And that's a big thing when you're watching for a tail or you're watching, for somebody surveilling you. You're looking for patterns. You're looking for, the same person, the same vehicle, the same, pair of shoes, whatever it could be. If you're seeing things like that, because a lot of these guys, if they know what they're doing and they're following you, they're going to change clothes and put on a fake mustache or, do stuff like that. And so you have to look for sort of the intangibles, maybe the way somebody walks and stuff like that. And one of the things that I used to do, when I would teach a young people's group combatives, I did it on an annual basis. And one of the things that I would do to build their level of awareness for those types of things, not so much the surveillance, but just awareness, just kind of piquing their awareness was I would take them to a mall and I would go disappear in the mall. This would usually be like a 6-week course. And so right at the beginning, I would do this. And I would say, okay, if you find me, you can, snap a picture with your cell phone or come tap me on the shoulder or whatever. And I would just go disappear. And they would have to search through the mall and try to find me, of course, while trying to maintain a normal demeanor and not look like a freaking weirdo, and so they would search for me and I wouldn't do anything special. And then toward the end of the class, after I'd kind of been teaching them all this awareness stuff, we would do it again. But I would dress up in, some kind of a disguise. I would, shave my beard or do like the one time I did a goatee and like a cowboy belt buckle and dyed my hair and the whole 9 yards. And one of them actually picked me up because of the way I walked, which I was really proud of. I mean, that was something that, I was trying to teach is like the intangibles, the things that you can't really change.
Yeah. And that's really a big part of it, I think. And you mentioned about the shoes. Guys can change out their clothes real quick, but typically guys aren't thinking about changing out their shoes. So that's a big thing. The gait, obviously the way they walk, that's a huge thing as well. And all good pieces of advice, man. So here's another area that you and I really have a lot in common is the combatives, the passion for learning, training, teaching combatives. What is your specialty as far as combatives go? Are you a grappling guy? Are you a stand-up guy? What is your kind of area of expertise there?
So my background comes from just straight up boxing. That's where I am. So I'm a stand-up guy. I've done some Muay Thai and kickboxing. I've done some jiu-jitsu. I've trained at some MMA gyms, but my passion is really boxing. But when it comes to what I teach and what I've done, I've had a lot of influence, I guess, from guys like Kelly McCann, Lee Morrison. I'm trying to think of some other names. Jerry Wetzel from Red Zone
Hmm.
Red Zone Defense. I trained with him not too long ago. And he's quite a grappling guy. And then Kelly and Lee are both sort of like modified World War II combatives guys, which is similar to your lineage with the what does Bill Wolf call his thing? Defendu?
Yeah, defend you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
yeah, and it's a cool thing to defend you, but I've always found that Muay Thai, man, like it's some serious stuff. People scoff at it sometimes, but you've obviously never fought anyone who knows Muay Thai.
Yeah, I mean the use of the elbows and the knees is deadly in that. Yeah. It's very, very effective. And I've never really taught much in the way of kicks because it puts you off balance and stuff. But if you can get somebody in a solid Thai plum and throw a knee, you can cause some damage without really unbalancing yourself. And so
I'm actually the same. I don't like all the Muay Thai kicks, man. The front kick, I like that, but all the fancy, whirly, flashy, kick them in the shin or kick them in the upper thigh, I just never found a use for it,
Yeah, those are the type of things where if you're really good at it, they're effective, or if you're using it as a cumulative effect. So most guys that are moderately good at it in a MMA or Muay Thai fight, they're using it cumulatively. So they're going to land 100 of those and slow you down. In a street fight, you don't want to be fighting for that long. So if you're really good at it, you can chop the guy's knee out, it's going to be effective. If not, I think, and this is a personal opinion, keep your feet on the ground.
Takedowns is something that I've always struggled with, and I'm not afraid to say it. I've got my blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and then obviously about 2.5, 3 years of Muay Thai as well. I've always just struggled with taking a guy down without first punching him in the face or something like that. I know that insecurity, that is kind of a thing. Like, you have to be able to take a guy down. Is there anything in particular that you've utilized or seen utilized that you have found to be helpful or handy?
The big thing that I use is sort of are you familiar with Craig Douglas from ShivWorks?
Yes.
Okay, he does a technique that he calls, I think he calls it like a helmet block or something like that. And it's basically like a vertical elbow shield and then sort of a horizontal elbow shield. And he'll kind of crash in like that if somebody's coming with some kind of a striking attack. I use a very similar type of technique, but instead of doing one, sort of an asymmetric thing, I just come up like this. And I have enough forearm and bicep, I can protect the sides. I can get my elbows close enough in the front that nothing's coming in, and I can still see. And so the only real area of vulnerability would be coming up underneath the chin, and I have yet to see an uppercut in the street, especially a properly thrown one. And if you're worried about that, you can tilt to the side a little bit. But that's my thing is if somebody's kind of windmilling, doing something crazy, I'm just going to dive in, and I'm just going to attach. I'm going to grab something, and I'm going to start throwing knees, elbows, I headbutt if necessary. I'm not a big headbutt fan. But if I'm in close proximity and I have nothing else, I can use it. And then basically just try to, snatch him to the ground, get on top, hopefully while he's on his stomach, get on his back so he can't get up. And that's sort of number one game plan. If it goes beyond that, there's other solutions, but that's kind of my ideal. Yeah, if I don't want to stand there and square off with somebody and start throwing punches, yeah, I'm going to try to crash in, grab a hold, and cause damage in close.
This is one thing that's really a plus about the security industry, and I think that we're going to see more and more guys transitioning over to the security industry from law enforcement at this point. Guys aren't able to really do much back taking anymore in law enforcement, and I'm assuming from now on it's going to be very haram. What's the word? Unlegit to take someone's back. All the choking's forbidden now. In security, I'm assuming that you got to do what you got to do, and you're going to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking overseas stuff, if you're talking personal protection, all that kind of thing, the big thing is you have to stay in line with whatever your company's rules of engagement happen to be. I was in a position with Diamondback where I wrote my own rules of engagement, essentially. I mean, obviously with oversight, but yeah, I mean, I had a huge hand in creating use of force procedures, and so I had a good understanding of them. And then so stay within that. If you're within that, usually you're defensible. that cop that started the whole thing in Minneapolis, he was kneeling on a guy's neck, which is never something that's been taught. I mean, that's been universally condemned by everyone and their mother, whether they know anything or not. Everybody thought that was a bad situation. That guy just didn't know what he was doing, and we could go down that rabbit trail of how terrible he was if we wanted to, but let's save that for another time. So the first thing, like I said, stay within company policy. And secondly, the goal is always use as little force as necessary to stop the threat. We're not out there to eliminate. We're out there to stop. If I have to put hands on somebody, it's just to stop them from doing, even if that's a stun and run tactic, even if it's just a palm heel to the solar plexus, and then I'm doing the Nike defense and running down the road. It is what it is. I'm not tied up in one specific thing or the other. It's just a matter of do what's effective and make it end. So the chokeholds, within a use of force continuum, I believe there is a purpose for them. My issue with the chokeholds has always been: do you know how long it takes to knock somebody out? Do you know how long it takes to give somebody brain damage? Do you know how long it takes to kill somebody? And add to that, because people will say, well, 6 to 8 seconds and 12 to, but add adrenaline to that, add pre-existing conditions to that, there's other things. And that's why I tend to shy away from chokeholds. I've used one in Haiti actually, and it worked very well. But it's one of those things where you need to know yourself. And that's why I would never write that into a use of force policy. But I also, if one of my guys used one and, if it wasn't something ridiculous, I'm not going to go, hey, that wasn't inside our policy. I'm going to be like, all right, yeah, that made sense. But to me, they're high risk, high reward type of thing.
And you bring up the stun and run, which I think would be probably very applicable, especially for a one-on-one individual security officer type of thing.
Yes.
You want to get your client out of there quickly. You don't have time to sit there and box the guy, right? So you want to, throw a strike at his nose or whatever, grab your client and run, if I'm not mistaken.
100%.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, the big one I like for that scenario is just like a cupped hand slap right to the side of the head. I train that. What I'll do when I train that is I'll have somebody hold a focus mitt like this. And so I'm coming in an arc. Then I'll have them hold another one like this. So I have to come in between and use just the torque of my body to hit that. So there's no telegraphing. It's just straight out and slap. And it's almost like a whipping motion. And I've had extremely good luck with that. And I've knocked people silly with that. And, I think if it's done right, it's one of the most devastating strikes you can do.
Yeah. I've gotten slapped in the eardrum with that actually. And straight up, my eardrum was burst. I was out of the fight for a while. And that wasn't even in a street fight, man. That was actually sparring. And it messes you up, dude.
For sure.
Yeah. So hand-to-hand combat, I mean, it's such an important thing when it comes to security, also civilian life, sheepdog, protector, whatever you want to call it. Use of force continuum, though. I don't think I see a lot of guys really looking into their state's use of force continuum. How important is that in your scale?
Well, it depends how bad you want to stay out of jail. It's obviously very important. If you don't understand, you hear these people say, and this is an older generation, they'll say things like, oh, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Well, is it though? Because being in prison the rest of your life isn't much of a life. If I'm trying to protect my daughter and I use lethal force and it's not justified and I end up in prison, well, I haven't protected my daughter. I have for that particular situation, but I haven't helped her with anything else in life that's going on. She's living without a dad at this point. So I might as well have just let myself die, essentially. Dark things to think about, but you need to understand what you can do, what you can't do. And, talking pistols, most people get their use of force knowledge from, an NRA concealed carry class, which is a great start, but it's not where to stop. You need to continue. You need to do research for yourself because those classes are designed to be a nationwide sort of blanket. They're not tailored to individual states unless you get a good instructor. And there are lots of them, don't get me wrong, but you need to look into that for yourself. Don't take some gun guy's advice for it, because I've heard lots of people say things like, oh, well, if somebody comes in my house, I'll shoot him, and then before the cops come, I'll shoot around in the ceiling so I can say I just fired a warning shot. No, we don't do that. Forensics are going to know what you did. You don't do that. Or the whole, oh, I'll shoot him and then I'll drag him back inside the house. Yeah, okay, good luck with that. Have fun in prison.
Yeah.
You have to understand what the laws are and what they aren't. And most states are pretty good with self-defense. It's one of those things where even if you're a little bit outside the lines, they're still going to be like, yeah, self-defense, we understand. It's stressful, it's whatever. But you want to have that ingrained in you and have so what I've always taught is basically there's 4 things that should be in place before you use force of any kind in self-defense. The first one obviously is ability. The person has to be able to attack you. If it's a cripple at the bottom of the stairs and he's yelling at you, he doesn't have the ability, and that includes the proximity. They have to be close enough to carry out the threat, which is obviously relative to what they may or may not have. Somebody with a sniper rifle at a mile might be able to be a legitimate threat, whereas somebody, again, a cripple at the bottom of the stairs, he's not going to do a lot to you. The second thing is, he's got to have the opportunity. He's got to be on the right side of the fence, essentially. If he's on the opposite side of a fence or a wall, he can't do anything to you. So you got to have the ability. He's got to have the opportunity. He's got to have the intent. The intent's a hard one because it's a mindset. You can't really tangibly prove a mindset. You have to prove what a lot of lawyers and stuff will call perceived intent. You have to say such and such body language, verbiage, movement, all of these things, armament, all of these things come together into a picture to show me that this person seems like they have the intent to cause me harm, and therefore I used force. They were close enough to me, they had a weapon in their hand, they were yelling at me, they were cussing at me, they were threatening me, and they were moving forward toward me and encroaching. Then you can say that, that's perceived intent. And the fourth thing is preclusion. And not every state has this. Some states have stand your ground laws and stuff like that, which don't require you to retreat, but you should always try to find some way out of it. There's no situation where you should just stand there and be like, oh, I can't wait till this guy comes close enough that I can shoot him. That's just not going to go well for you. If you can prove that you've done everything you can to avoid this situation, that person persisted, again, that's going to build into that picture of perceived intent. And so then, regardless of what your state's laws are with self-defense, if you can establish all of those things and properly articulate them, you're going to have a much better time should you get dragged into court.
Wise words. Very wise words. And I would assume that the same could be said for hand-to-hand combatives, because if you just haul off and sock somebody and they didn't have that intent, you might be taking a one-way trip behind bars for a while, right?
100%, yeah. And so I use the example of a handgun, but this applies to any level of force, whether it be, the only level of force that I think might not be affected by this would be, verbal, or maybe using a flashlight to temporarily, take somebody's visual horizon away while you're moving to another location.
I saw on your Instagram a picture with you and Mr. Lee Morrison of Urban Combatives. I think you guys were holding a couple of ARs or something. I could be mistaken. Where was that taken?
That was taken in Canada, believe it or not.
And you guys were just shooting off some rounds, or?
So he came and taught 2 seminars when I was living up there. And during the off time, they're whatever they are, 2 or 3 day seminars, whatever it is. And so during the off time, we went out and did some shooting. After that, did some eating, did some drinking, and had an overall good time. I can't say enough good things about Lee.
He seems like a really good guy. I'm trying to get him on the podcast, actually, but all of the videos I've seen, man, he is just like such a solid individual.
Yeah, great instructor too.
Yeah, his stuff. I mean, he's like a scientist with self-defense. Yeah. So the Jagroon crew. This is a cool account, man. And actually, this is how we linked up and I was looking at your cool photos or cool guy photos, and you've got one. It looks like it was in Africa, but I think that was in Haiti maybe. You've got the vest on and the boonie cap and all of that. And then you've got another one, I think it was probably in Syria. And I would highly recommend, guys, go check out your Instagram at the Jagaloon crew. Is it Jagaloon Actual now?
That's a great question. I know we talked about that before, and I couldn't actually remember what it was. So let me pull it up real quick and just make sure, because I don't want to give people the wrong idea. Jagaloon Actual is what it is. Yes.
JAGLOON Actual, and I'm going to throw that down below in the comments here, or in the what's the word I'm looking for, Dan? Description.
There you go.
Description. It'll be down below in the description. So definitely go and check that out, because he's got some cool photos. And do you have any plans with the Instagram? Are you going to be expanding, or?
We're up in the air at this point. You know, if I start doing some more work overseas and stuff like that, there will definitely be more pictures and videos and stuff coming. Man, I'm still trying to recover a bunch of stuff. I lost a significant amount of my pictures from when I was overseas when my computer crashed, and so I'm still trying to recover some of that stuff. And if I can find some of that, there'll be some pretty cool stuff, videos of airstrikes and stuff like that going on. But besides that, I mean, if I start doing some more work overseas, I'll definitely be putting more pictures up. And that goes for training too. If I start doing some more training, things are really up in the air. Like I said, we had a baby not that long ago. She's 8 months, and it's been a little bit of a learning process. You know, it's the first, and so trying to figure all that out. And so I've had to kind of put everything sort of on the back burner. But now that she's becoming a little more independent, I'm hoping to do some more training, get some more exposure out there. So, yeah, I think there's some things coming. Stay tuned.
And I'm looking forward to it. You know, I sit down with a lot of guys and talk to a lot of different guys, but you have a way of putting things that really just makes sense. It's very practical. It's none of this like, let me just tell war stories the whole time. Everything that you say kind of has an end and a mean to it, so that's much appreciated. Cool. So, Dan, listen, I mean, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a freaking hell of a conversation, dude, and I'll look forward to, at some point, circling the wagons and touching base again as time goes on.
Definitely. Let's do it again. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, man. Awesome. I'll look forward to it. So, one more thing, dude. Is there any websites that you have out there? I know the Instagram Jagaloon Actual, but websites, Facebook, anything like that?
Yeah, right now I still have my diamondbackcombatives.com website up. It's not the best way to contact me, but there's a little bit of reading you can do on there, some basic stuff, a few pictures. Really the best way to get a hold of me is through the Instagram or my email. You feel free to send me an email, dan@diamondbackcombatives.com. And go ahead and put that in the description as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to talk to people, answer questions, whatever. You know, I'm fairly approachable, and I'd say that's the best way to contact me is either Instagram or email. I don't do a lot with the website right now. We're looking at potentially rebranding, restructuring, all that kind of stuff. So it's up in the air at this point.
So if guys want to, possibly ask you about training, getting into the private security industry, they can hit you up and DM you on Instagram or dan@diamondbackcombatives.com.
100%.
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on here. And until next time, guys, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense. And I will see you on the next Tactical Podcast. Cheers, Mother Flowers.